evening, everyone. My name is Azad. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a second-year Master of Public Health student at the Brown School of Social Work and a student in the WashU Law Interdisciplinary Environmental Clinic. Over the past few weeks, we have explored several environmental justice issues disproportionately impacting Black St. Louisans. And this evening, we will be highlighting two more of these critical issues. The first being food apartheid and limited access to healthy food, and my colleague Anna Catherine will be highlighting the burden of high home energy costs. To begin, let's explore what food security is. Food security is defined as availability, access, and utilization of food. This means that individuals must have sufficient quantity of food available, physical and economic access to food, while also having enough dietary intake and ability to utilize nutrients in the food. So what happens if individuals lack these three main factors of food security? Many of you may be familiar with the term food desert, which is defined as a low-income neighborhood where either a substantial number or share of residents have low access to a supermarket or a large grocery store. But that term really does not capture the entire problem. When we use the term food desert, the issue is implied as just a geographic problem, but that is not the case. This is why we use the term food apartheid. Food apartheid highlights food systems as a whole, considering various factors like income, race, and geography. It focuses on social and racial inequalities that are at play in our food system. And it also recognizes that the systems that are in place are what make it difficult for people living in low-income areas to access fresh and healthy food. So now I want us to take a quick pause, and I want you all to think about what food access looks like for you and in your neighborhoods and in your community. Do you have enough food available? Do you have all forms of access to that food, whether that be physical or economic access? And is that food really serving your body? Circumstances leading to what we know as food apartheid in St. Louis vary, but things like historically discriminatory housing practices and redlining in St. Louis have impacted what food access looks like for Black St. Louisans. Black St. Louisans are almost twice as likely to have limited access to healthy food as white St. Louisans. So that gets us to think, what is that link? Why is this such a disproportionate burden in Black neighborhoods and in Black residents in St. Louis? In St. Louis City, there are fewer grocery stores with fresh food in majority Black neighborhoods. And secondly, there's limited personal and public transportation to reach distant stores with fresh food. Here we'll explore what food apartheid really looks like in St. Louis, and these two maps really paint a stark difference in what food access is in St. Louis. To begin, we can explore the map on the left, which shows low-income census tracts with low supermarket access. And the map on the right shows census tracts with low vehicle availability to access healthy food. You can also see both maps also highlight majority Black neighborhoods. You can see in those little black speckles that are highlighted in the map. From these maps, you can see the map on the left shows that there is a direct link between low-income neighborhoods and low supermarket access. This map also shows us that a significant share of the population in North City lives more than half a mile or a mile away from the nearest supermarket. We can also see in South City, where there are fewer majority Black census tracts, that these tracts that are majority Black tend to also be low income and have low supermarket access. The issue of access for many Black St. Louisans isn't just centered in what food options are in their neighborhoods, but also how to get to grocers that do have healthy foods. We can see on the map on the right that a majority of the city's census tracts with low vehicle availability are also the same neighborhoods where residents live more than half a mile away from the nearest supermarket. And although public transportation can potentially increase mobility in residential areas with low vehicle availability, the St. Louis Metro Transit System prioritizes commercial areas over residential areas. For example, just think of, even though the Metro has opened the North County Transit Center, we know that services still haven't been expanded to North City. And thinking about both of these maps, you just think of how grocery shopping for healthy food really isn't a one-off monthly trip, but a more frequent trip, which requires to have access to a car or reliable transportation every day, far more than what is accessible to Black St. Louisans today. Now we can explore the impact of food and on your health. Research has shown access to healthy food is associated with lower risk for obesity and other diet-related chronic diseases. And for many Black St. Louisans, the health impacts of food apartheid are burdening the health and well-being of their daily lives. In St. Louis City, 38% of African American adults are obese compared to 27% of white city residents. And when it comes to diabetes, another adverse health outcome linked to food apartheid, 14% of African Americans have been diagnosed with diabetes compared with 11% of whites. The burden of costly treatment for many of these diseases can be prevented and can be prevented by overhauling food systems in low-income and minority communities. Food justice in St. Louis as a movement has really been cultivated by community and driven by a history of Black activism. Small-scale food retailers, urban agriculture, and mobile markets are working to improve healthy food access for St. Louisans. Many different organizations are doing this really critical work, and for this evening's presentation, we've highlighted two of those groups. The first being the Heru Urban Farming Garden. The Heru Urban Farming Garden is a project that started in 2018 with 3 lots in the Kingsway West neighborhood in Ward 1, where 33% of the population lives below the poverty line. This pilot farm was so successful that the Heru Urban Farming acquired 4 more lots in the College Hill neighborhood in Ward 3, where 41% of the residents live below the poverty line. And we've also highlighted a quote here from Tasha Phonics, a food justice organizer at the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. She works with growers in North City, North County, and Metro East to access land, establish farms, and create value-added products from what they grow. And finally, without all of our other Environmental Justice Solution Series meetings, we've made it a point to highlight the impact of these environmental justice issues coupled with the pandemic. And with food apartheid, that's also a really critical space to address. The most recent CDC update on COVID-19 and people with certain medical conditions states adults living with obesity and diabetes, both of which are linked to food apartheid, might be at an increased risk for severe illnesses from the virus that causes COVID-19. And coupled with increased inactivity and minimal social support, COVID-19 has changed what normal food patterns have been for most of us, but that burden of food apartheid on Black St. Louisans has been exacerbated by the pandemic. COVID-19 has worsened food insecurity for many school children whose families relied heavily on school food programs in order for their children to receive healthy food. Additionally, people working blue-collar jobs have been impacted the most by the pandemic, burdening families who already have minimal access to healthy and affordable food to spend more in order to eat nutritious food. All of these factors continue to reinforce the cycle of poverty, forcing those who can least afford it to always pay the most. We also see the cycle reinforced in the high costs of energy bills, which my colleague Anna Catherine will cover here shortly. To conclude, I really want us to think back to that first question and reflect on what food access looks like to you. Are there social inequalities that you can automatically think of when you think about food access? Are there ways that you can think of to erase some of these injustices? The goal of this series is beyond exploring maps and statistics, but rather listening to you and learning from your recommendations and insights. I will now turn it over to Anna Catherine for her presentation. Thank you very much. I'm finished.